Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're basically acting as digital detectives to uncover the hidden trails that users leave behind on websites. We are digging deep into the totally fascinating world of Clickstream Analytics, where, believe it or not, every single click tells a story.
Picture this for a second. Imagine thousands of people visit your physical brick-and-mortar store, but almost no one actually buys anything. Now, in the real world, you could literally just stand in the corner, watch them, and see what's going wrong. Are the aisles too narrow? Is the checkout line too long? But online, web traffic can feel like a complete black box. How on earth do you figure out where your customers got frustrated and left when you can't physically see them?
Well, here is our roadmap for cracking this case. We'll kick things off with the digital footprint, then move into tracking user navigation paths. After that, we'll talk about fixing a leaky funnel, breaking down bounces, exits, and journeys, and finally, we'll wrap up with decisions and data limitations.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the digital footprint.
By definition, Clickstream Analytics is the sequence of user actions on a website. But the crucial takeaway here is that Clickstream data isn't just a bunch of random, meaningless numbers or isolated server pings. It is quite literally a trail of digital footprints that form a continuous narrative of human decisions. That late-night doom scroll, the little hesitation before hitting buy, every single click, swipe, and page view, it's all recorded.
So a simple everyday journey, say going from the homepage to a product page, into the cart, and finally hitting checkout, gets meticulously logged behind the scenes. And the structured data fields are really specific. You've got session IDs that group a user's visit together, exact timestamps capturing the exact order of events, page URLs showing the exact location, and event types tracking specific actions like page view or add to cart. All of this data becomes our raw material to piece together the user's story.
Which brings us to Section 2, tracking user navigation paths.
When we start mapping out a typical user sequence, from the landing page to a category, then a product, cart, and checkout, we can instantly start identifying the most popular routes to a successful conversion. But more importantly, it reveals where things break down. If you see a pattern of a user bouncing back and forth over and over between the product and category pages, that repeated backtracking absolutely screams confusing navigation. It tells us the user probably couldn't find the specific detail they needed to confidently add the item to their cart.
And spotting that kind of looping behavior brings us to a really critical junction in our investigation. Why are users getting lost? Because knowing where they went or where they looped back just isn't enough. We have to pivot our investigation and ask the really tough questions about why they are behaving this way in the first place.
To figure out that why, we actually rely on 4 distinct tiers of analytics. First up is descriptive analytics, which just asks what happened, like finding the most common path before a purchase. Next, we dig a little deeper with diagnostic. Why did it happen? Why exactly are users dropping off here? Then we pivot to the future with predictive analytics. What happens next? Like which specific users might abandon their carts based on past patterns. And finally, the gold standard, prescriptive analytics. What should we do about it? Notice how we shift from just looking in the rearview mirror to actually grabbing the steering wheel and taking action.
That leads us nicely into Section 3, fixing the leaky funnel.
A funnel basically tracks the specific sequence of steps we expect users to complete. Just think about a starting crowd of, say, 10,000 eager website visitors. Watch how that number steadily dwindles as they move from viewing a product to adding it to the cart, to finally checking out. By the end of it, we might be left with just 900 purchases. That harsh, continuous narrowing, that's just the everyday reality of e-commerce.
Now, when we extract that funnel data, we can pinpoint our biggest conversion bottlenecks step by step. Every single stage has a calculated drop-off rate. So maybe 35% leave after just visiting the website, 50% bail during checkout. But if you look closely at the step right in the middle, between view product and add to cart, you can see something disastrous is happening.
A massive 57% drop-off. That is our biggest leak, and it's our prime suspect for user friction. Why look at the product but absolutely refuse to take the next step? Is the price way too high? Did they see the shipping costs and physically gasp? Is the add to cart button literally hidden out of view? Funnel analysis gives us the exact coordinates, so we know where to deploy our design team first.
Okay, moving on to Section 4, bounces, exits, and journeys.
It is absolutely vital to know the distinction between a bounce and an exit when you're looking at clickstream data. A bounce is a swift, one-and-done departure. The user lands on a page, maybe a blog post from a Google search, and immediately leaves without clicking anything else on your site. An exit, however, happens after a multi-page journey. It's simply the final page they view in a session before heading out. So the crucial takeaway is this: all bounces are exits, but not all exits are bounces. If a product page has a super high exit rate but a really low bounce rate, it means people are browsing around your site, eventually making their way to that specific product page, and then deciding to leave. That tells us a totally different story than a user who clicks a link, hates the first thing they see, and instantly bounces.
Mapping those specific exit points against a 5-stage customer journey, spanning awareness, interest, consideration, action, and retention, helps us connect physical, digital actions with psychological intent. Clickstream data perfectly reveals the entry pages during the awareness stage, the specific sequences they loop through during consideration, and exactly where they abandon ship right before taking action.
And finally, we've reached Section 5, Decisions and Data Limitations. At the end of the day, all this data empowers us to make highly targeted changes to actually stop the leaks. No more guessing games. If Clickstream Analytics show endless looping, we prioritize redesigning navigation menus. If there is a 50% drop-off at checkout, we brutally cut the number of checkout steps. The data might even reveal that mobile users bounce at twice the rate of desktop users, which tells you right away that your mobile site is broken. Every single data insight should dictate a better user experience.
But hey, as good detectives, we have to constantly acknowledge our blind spots. Clickstream data is incredibly powerful, but it isn't perfect. We deal with common limitations like bot traffic, where automated scripts heavily inflate our visitor numbers and totally mess up our pattern analysis. On top of that, privacy restrictions and consent rules often limit the data we're legally allowed to collect in the first place. And cross-device tracking, that's a huge hurdle. The exact same user browsing on their smartphone during their morning commute and then actually buying on their laptop later that evening might easily appear as two completely separate journeys. If we take the raw data at face value, these limitations can definitely distort our findings.
Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. I want to leave you with this thought. Clickstream data perfectly tells us what users do. But how do we figure out why they do it? The analytics flawlessly track the footprints, but it is ultimately up to us to uncover the human motivations behind them. The data gives us the what, but connecting that data with real business context, user feedback, and simple human empathy, that's what gives us the why. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep tracking those footprints, keep asking the tough questions, and I'll catch you next time.